And just a quick public service announcement before we start today. Um, if you're on our mailing list, uh, you'll see at the top a link to a survey. We put that out there because we really want to get your feedback on how we're doing servicing the community, the Agile Boston community, but the worldwide Agile community. We want to bring the best content and we really want to provide the best services we can. So if you have a few minutes and you can take that survey, please do. We'd love to get your feedback. Uh, and the more honest your feedback is, the better. Some of the feedback I've seen so far on it, a lot of people don't know we have a YouTube channel, but we do have a YouTube channel at Agile Boston. And I post all of these recordings to that YouTube channel, as well as podcasts, including one with George that we did. And I'm starting to create shorts from that as well. So if you're not subscribed to it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like the content, please hit that like button. It's good for our YouTube stats as well. Only if you like the content. That lets me know if you view it and like it, I'll be able to produce more of it. So that's it. Just a couple of those public service announcements. And now let's get on to the main event. So I want to introduce Jorge Quintela, coming to us all the way from Portugal. Are you in Portugal?
Yes,
In
I am.
Portugal,
Thank
right?
you, Joe.
And George is an enterprise agile coach, an executive coach. He is well versed in Scrum and Lean and Kanban and a whole bunch of different scaling frameworks. He's a colleague of Dan Mesick right now at a company. And I love George's topic for today because it's something from some of the feedback we've received in the survey, people are really interested in how Agile and AI are going to work together. How do we move forward? So I love George's talk today and the title of the talk, which is Scrum in the Age of AI, Reimagining the Empirical Process for a Changing Future. So love it. It's aligned with our last theme for Give Thanks to Scrum, which is the future of Scrum. And AI is a big part of that. So we're excited to have George here today, and we welcome him. And I'm going to hand it off to him. George, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the invitation. Nice to see all of you today. Thank you for coming. Setting a bit the scene for today, this is a collaborative session. I will share some slides of what I have as my perspectives, my views, my thoughts. I can be right or wrong. Please challenge me. Please make me also learn and grow with this conversation. I like the idea of a conversation about complexity, creativity, and continuous adaptation to be really honest. So I bring what I have, my view of the truth. I hope that you bring your views of the truth to participate a bit, and that eventually we'll get some growth and some knowledge out of these sessions. Okay? So yeah, please bring it on. Along this session, and please feel free to raise questions on the chat, to speak up. I'll have some polls in the middle of the presentation, middle of the session, so that we interact. So let's really make this a bit fun. Yeah, and happy to see some of you. I know some of the faces that are on the call, so happy to see you. I feel at home already. Okay. So I was mentioning the idea is to explore critical questions and not really prescriptive answers. So I'll bring the questions, I'll bring what I see, and let's have a conversation. Because the value comes from the collective, and I come back to the basics of, let's say, of what we do as coaches. We try to understand a bit the context, we try to understand a bit the process, and then we try to navigate through complex systems. And I think we are all now in a complex system it's probably a time for change, but we don't really know what's the change all about. So it's going to be interesting. Okay. So why does this topic really matter now? And I think the reason why I also chose this topic, because I could have brought lots of other things, is not because I'm a master of AI and not even close to it, but I'm foreseeing here that we're in times of change. And as I imagine, most of us are dealing with change daily. This might be very interesting for us to step back and look where AI can fit and where Scrum and all these new ways of working that we bring fit in these new times that are coming. Okay, so to start, I'm going to make this already fun. I'm going to ask you to pick up your phone or go to your computer. There's a Slido link or a QR code, and just please drop your thoughts here. What do you think is the future of Scrum in the age of AI? So really just playing a bit here before dropping a bit of your expectations of your views before we even go to my slides, just to open a bit the door. Please feel free just to share what comes to your mind. If you want to, you can also speak up and share your thoughts. It doesn't really need to be always on Slido, so it's just a visual representation. Okay, role of Scrum Master will change a lot. Easy access to knowledge. Interesting point. Automation of PO duty on backlog. Oh, for sure, there will be automations coming, similar to today, method effective to effectively bring the teams together to produce valuable work, adapt or become obsolete. It will be easier to adapt and customize. Working with new AI team members. Okay, very good perspectives. AI is the new mom. Scrum Masters the new norm. Scrum enhances the norm. Scrum Master could be a lot. It could be a bot. Okay. I think it's still relevant. It is a framework to create feedback loops, which will all data be collected to improve the models, less prescriptive and more than currently. Okay, new GRC with ethical rules. Okay, wow. Quite a few different views here. I really like the creativity and the different perspectives that we have here. It really opens here and sets a bit the scene of where I'm going to guide here for this conversation. If you have any questions or you want to say something, please raise up. Else, I'm just going to dive in to what I brought here today. Um, okay. I started by setting a bit of the foundation in terms of because I try to always try to see the full story, not just the chapter we are on. Okay, I'm trying to connect where do we actually come from. So if you look at least what we were taught from school, I don't know, I wasn't there, so I cannot even say this is our reality. But what we were taught is that we actually evolved as a human species. From crafting tools, from simple things we found on the ground. We started cooking, fire, we started creating shelters, we started creating communities. We eventually evolved to playing with agriculture. We started having societal structures, and we started even evolving more, creating our more advanced tools, let's put it this way. So this was kind of the first step of our journey as humanity, as we're taught, at least. The second jump that we did was actually, okay, so we have tools. How can we actually automate something? So we started bringing mechanical tools, replacing all that hand labor. We started creating engines and all the assembly lines. So this comes more to the Industrial Revolution. Um, we talk about electricity and production, mass production as we know it today. And this is important because it will be triggered in the next slides afterwards. And then we can say we had engineering or system thinking, or actually even the structured or the organized, processed way of doing things, the logical process of the step-by-step consequence mathematical approach. So I'm trying to guide us through our evolution to actually come to the point where we're going to reach in a bit to understand, okay, this is our journey. Where can we step with this forward? Um, we eventually came to, and this is more recent, the invention of the computer and the internet. So we started even evolving more from the automation of the mechanics and the logic thinking to actually having information and communication technologies. And this would be very important because we started automating the intellectual, not also the manual, because we mechanically automated the manual. We started automating the intellectual, doing calculations, simulations, data storage processes. This was really interesting. We eventually invented software, networks, and digital workspaces. So this is really where we are today in a way. And then eventually we saw, okay, now we can actually collaborate globally and not just locally. So this was kind of the big jump, okay? And I'm building up the momentum to create the storyline to where we are today, okay? Where we are today, more or less. We actually came from algorithms to artificial intelligence. So this is kind of interesting. So we created computers that can process logic, and now we're actually asking them to process algorithms, and they're starting to mimic our patterns, our cognition, our human decision making, our language. So we're trying to actually raise a small child, but artificially, if we want to say it this way. So this is what we're trying to teach. In this way, artificial intelligence. So we're trying to input it in search engines, recommendation, chatbots, smart assistants. We're trying to put it in all of these points. Um, Eventually, what we're actually doing is we're teaching machines to learn, trying to mimic what we know about our intelligence and how we process information. So we're actually trying to scale the human experience in the digital way. So we taught machines to learn, not just to make calculations. Okay, so this was the path that I put here from our journey of humanity from different ages to where we actually stand today. And this puts us here on a precipice, on a bridge of, okay, this is what we have. So what now? Okay, so what will be the turning point? And I'll make a pause here before I open to another question to see if anybody wants to speak out, to ask some comments, because then we'll drill down. This is kind of just setting the foundation, setting the scene of a storyline of the human experience, if you want to put it this way. Okay.
We do have one question in chat.
Okay, sorry, I'm not seeing the chat. If
AGI or
So,
SI is next, the agency of the machine.
yes,
yeah,
because I referred to Benjo last paper on the law zero of the human agency could be uh, could be shared with a machine agency and the evolution of these narrow AI from a little search engine. Like not, right now, 86% of the people in Canada, at least from some survey we receive with the University Collective, they use it as a ANS type of search engine, even like ChatGPT and Claude. But it could do more than that. And now there's a big debate between agentic and non-agentic virtual assistants within the AI. So with the lawzero.org, if you're interested to see.
I will definitely search more because and I think the reason why I wanted to place this here is because I think there's lots of things happening in society now. One of them is actually we're actually in a tremendous social cultural crisis or even financial crisis that shakes a bit the market, and that puts in question certain jobs and certain roles. And if you look at Scrum and we look at technologies and where we actually saw a lot of agility coming from was actually from the digital world, and the digital world is being shaped up by the new technologies, and AI is a very big influential step there. But let's continue the conversation. I will open then to a next question. Okay. So, and what do you think comes now? If we actually, and then please feel free to answer the questions vocally or really write it. So, if until now we had these steps of evolution from creating the tools, creating a society, digitalizing, automating mechanically, now we start automating, let's say, in a way our logical, our processing motor. So what comes next? Do you think that we're in a turning point in terms, are we in a shift in the humanity to another big step or not? Because that's the topic for conversation that will then serve as a foundation for us to actually address what's the impact on how we see Scrum, how we see um, Agile in a way. So humanity is splitting. Okay, I'm curious to know a bit more about what you mean by humanity is splitting
You,
here.
you mentioned about shifting. I think we are arriving with these AI, generative AI or assistant agentic to a moment of chasm or chasm, I think we say in English properly, chasm, where like the commercialization of it through open AI versus those will be more ethical. So I believe that there's people like the red line of technology usage it's at the tipping point, a turning point, as you mentioned. So I see a lot of more of my colleagues, they unplug after work, especially those who work in IT, and they getting back to nature at a certain point. And there's others that they want maybe to go into a kind of a trance. How do you say that again? Oh my God, I'm tired today. Sorry. It's not transhumanist type of thing,
Okay.
implementable artifact to connect with AI and people. So I think like that's why I feel for the next 3 years we're gonna split ourselves into two type of humanity, but maybe three type of humanity. Especially with the future of work. And I get some teams in Texas that they get rid of the POs right now using agentic AI for managing the backlog. So the engineer, they just ask question and they just prioritize the backlog without. I'm talking about a PO proxy, of course, not
Yes,
a
yes,
not a
yes.
business owner because the business owner is still there calling the shot in the vision. But yeah, so what we're gonna do with those people and human. So that's why I think it's
Okay.
a splitting right now of how
Oh,
we.
this is a very good, interesting comment, and I will build up, and then I'll go through the other replies that we have here. So I think, and my perspective of being of the human experience, if you want to look more on a philosophical or even a spiritual approach, uh, the only certainty that we have, the only constant that we have in life is change. Um, and coming with that concept that okay, everything is always changing, everything is always moving, energy doesn't stay still, it transforms, it moves. We as a human race, we need to evolve. We are evolving. We're creating new tools. Now, whenever we create a new tool, and I think here is the thing, there's a transition moment, and now I think we're starting to enter that transition. And the tool can be used for good or for bad. I mean, we can use an eye for good or bad things. We can use a car for good or bad things. It's how we will use the tool. Eventually, there will be people in the beginning exploiting these tools because they give advantage. And it can be used in a good or a bad way. Hope we can get some regulation, some control in a positive way. When I say control, it's creating the guidelines for this to be even safe, because I think that's a big concern also that happens around is that, well, and I'm seeing here leadership control via access and control of AI. So, of course, if you are able to control more information, more decision making, then it might be scary that a small group of people will even be more empowered if they are in the back end of the AI. So we have here, well, some people saying sit down on the beach and enjoy life. Well, that's a positive, and I hope one of the perspectives of this transition that eventually we would also shift a bit in how we perceive life and work. And I hope that's something. Um, Humanity splitting, cheaper, dumber, very dependent job skills, people thinking, society. Wow, quite a lot of things. I like what I see there, scary unknown. And I think this is just honest. We're human beings. We're in a moment of change, and it's something that we don't know. We haven't done it before. We don't know what's going to happen. But eventually, it's part of life. We're on a river. It's taking us on the flow, and eventually we'll have to adapt to a complex environment and system and make the best out of it. And I think that is what's scary because eventually, if maybe the past 30 to 40 years, even in terms of job and in terms of life, things were changing, but there was kind of some certainty, some predictability. And I'm seeing predictability in terms of security, maybe, at least in the Western countries, security financially, security of job. And if now you're saying that your basic securities, that's work and that's what you do with the majority of your time, are going to be shaken, you question, okay, if suddenly I don't have a job, what will I do? Where will I get the money? How will I? Well, and these questions are very good to bring, I think. Okay. Somebody else wants to comment or to say some words before I move to the next slides because I like the dump of information here that we have because it
Let's
is
create
really interesting.
a digital twin of ourselves.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
in a sense, we could
yeah.
elaborate, but it's not the time. But we have to think about this security of our identity. So if we don't have a digital identity, decentralized and using even the blockchain, we'll be confused with the AI. So that's why I think we have to create a digital twin that we control ourselves.
Okay, we have a hand up from Christoph.
Yeah, I strongly believe that we all tend to forget that all the virtual things like AI and computing have very basic physical ground, which is kind of being forgotten as being a real problem, as there is not enough energy, not enough all kinds of resources available that's needed to do all these things. So we rarely talk about those aspects, and I think this will be big in the future.
I fully agree, Christoph. And before going to Mario, I think we are in the dreaming mode of the potential of what the technology can bring us, but there's an eventual cost to drive. There's an investment of energy for that technology to produce something. And I think that the resources, and especially calculation and electricity, which we haven't solved the issue with energy. If we solve the energy the problem of energy, and suddenly we have unlimited energy from a clean source, okay, then maybe this will be a wild run. But until then, maybe the technology will help us get there. But I think we're not there yet, and I fully agree with you. And I think we are still very much in control of these technologies. I think whoever is behind the scene has the on and the off button really close to their manual button to shift everything off. I would imagine so. My thinking, I hope. Let's think they think the same way. And Mario, you also have your hands up.
Some of what you're saying to me plays in. You might have heard of Laloux's beyond organizations in different colors. So as I'm thinking about this, it's of course it is the evolution of AI, but it's also the mindset of people, groups of people. And so there's red, green, teal, orange, or different evolutionary thinking that's going on. And I think part of what plays into this, there's going to be what I call the red people who are going to use AI and its tools and technology for worse. And then there's teal people who might want to use it for better. And so I think you always have to deal with the lowest common denominator, unfortunately, which is probably going to be red. It just makes me think, though, how the usage of this really is going to depend on the organizations, the cultures that are actually going to be playing in this space.
I think what you bring here is a terrific perspective, because indeed that there is no guide, no script, and eventually, and from at least from my understanding of my experience of what I've seen in the history of humanity, we only learn after we do mistakes. So eventually somebody will try to be a bit greedy and try to take some advantage using a tool in an improper way, and then we will see, oh, this is not fair, let's see if we correct it. But eventually I hope we don't do this for big things and it's smallly contained. But I think that it's also part of the evolution of humankind. We still learn paying a big cost, unfortunately, good or bad. And I hope that we're mature enough to limit the cost. I think we talk a lot of guardrails and about limiting the risk. I hope that here we're playing safe. Eventually there will be something that we think is not so correct happening. And I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't happen. But I think it's part of the warnings that will come. Now, you were saying that also other people might be using it very creatively and positively. And I think that will be kind of 90% or 95. As usually we see with new technologies, people are engaged, people see the potential. And I think we see the opportunity of evolution. And when I say evolution, is not replacing ourselves as human beings. Evolution, how more things can we do in our experienced life, in our 100 and some years of life, if we're able to reach there. What can else we do what can else we experience and do while we're here? And I think maybe this better tool, or if we use it wisely, it can bring us a more interesting experience. And I'm not only talking about work, I'm talking in general life, because eventually if machines connect with AI and suddenly we have automation in a positive way, maybe there will be a tremendous work revolution. But let's see. Okay. Anybody else wants to share some comments before we proceed? Okay, good. Because you mentioned here, what's the value of human labor? That will be interesting. And employment raises questions of fundamental nature. Okay. Before we even just go to the next slide, I'm just going to mention on the previous ages that we saw evolution of man, even on the Industrial Revolution, there was a big challenge in terms of what do people do now. And after the transition passed, we eventually found lots of things that people can be busy and can sell services for. Of course, the transition time, which can be 1 year, can be 10, can be 30, we don't know. That will be the challenge because I would say culturally and in terms of society, we're not there yet. We're in transition. That will be kind of the explorers mode. And I think the explorers will be very rewarded, the ones that are successful. So the pioneers. But let's bring it to the next level. Okay. My thoughts here. So in a way, what I'll see as kind of the opportunity is from manual work, and I say here manual cerebral work to meaningful work. And I'll play here. So I would see that we will, because we're kind of way selfish as a species in a way, and we'll try to use AI to help us. Okay, it's a tool. How can AI handle all the repetitive, all the things that we find boring, that we don't want to do, that we can predict, that can be repeated in a way. So we'll try to delegate that as most as possible. And this can be tricky because even writing an email, I know that people are writing messages, they just try to automate using the tool so it's very fast. Fine. It's a way to simplify your work. Humans might shift toward a more creative, a more empathetic way of seeing life. More talking about creativity, philosophy, understanding of life, even maybe even going a bit more crazy and less worried about the basics of getting energy and food on the table, and more about what's the human experience, what ethical changes, what should we do? We might evolve to a different level of consciousness if you want to bring it, because suddenly we don't need to focus on the basics because they might be taken care of. So this is a very interesting opportunity. Maybe not for us, but for our children, that would be kind of their seeing the life in 20 or 30 years, that will be very different. AI is a tool for augmentation and not replacement. And here is something that I think is really important. All the tools that we build eventually are to help us grow, to help us expand. Not actually to replace us. Now, what we will ask them to replace is actually the things that we don't want to do, the boring things, the things that we as humans don't really want to do, at least in the beginning. Let's see. And then eventually, and this is something interesting, we're actually evolving from our focus from production. When we say a factory or a brand will mass produce a product, we might actually go into producing a customized, purposely defined product per customer. So instead of creating a standard iPhone, we might start in creating iPhones for a specific person because we have information, we have more, and then we'll actually create a dedicated, purposely created product that is very useful for that person because of those reasons. So we actually create a bit of a more interesting, a more spicy world. If you say instead of going to McDonald's and we only have those menus, now you can multiply that by 1,000 or 1,000,000, and that will be wow. Okay, depending on who goes there, it will be a different solution, and that might be a tremendous opportunity for humankind. Um, okay. I'm going to move forward. If you have any questions, please roll up. I'm bringing here back the basics of Scrum and empirical, transparency, inspect, and adapt, because I think this does not change. The process does not change, and that's what I want to mention here. So we keep on having the transparency to be able to gather data and to inspect and then process the data and adapt it. Okay. This system is built for uncertainty and complexity, and I think we're human beings. Our society is not straightforward. We don't have only one society, we have several. So we have complexity by design. There's a lot of uncertainty because we are not predictable creatures in a way. We try to think we're predictable, but we're human. We have emotions. We shift sideways. We have irony. We like to live, some people in the safe side, some people in the wild side. That's part of our diversity. So I think the basics of the framework will still stay. Okay. And now I'm going to trigger a question to see if we pop up a bit more conversation. Because for me, I see that at this moment, oh, let me go back. Oh, sorry, because it was the screen. I think we're in a turning point to understand that this empirical process matters even more today with all this change. And I will trigger the answer afterwards, but I'm asking you, from your perspective, why do you think the empirical process matters more than ever today? Why does the process itself is so important? Because for me, going back to the basics, to the foundation, and talking about the process is key, and is fundamental for us if we look at Scrum and if we look at ways of working. And please feel free to write some comments there, or to really just unmute and speak. This is a conversation, as I like it to be. Okay, changes occur faster than ever. Yes. Yeah, I still remember my parents having a stable job for life, and that's no longer the option. Things change very fast. Because the policies in AI are just assumptions. Yes, and I think here the assumptions is that we have a dream. We want to see if it's possible to use this tool in that direction, or if it's just for just on the first steps, and it might not go in that direction. It provides discipline to ensure that the important information is not lost in the noise. Okay, yes. Because AI agents interacting with each other and humans is already producing more predictable emergence. Yes. I think here it comes the unexpected. We don't know where we're going, but it's part of the journey, because yeah, okay, things might turn out differently than expected. Actually, they will. Yes, I think here we don't know. It's the transition where we'll land in a few years. It will be very interesting, but I think from experience of life, we need to be open, and we need to think, okay, we will have to find a way to navigate through these unstable waters, and to understand what opportunities and what's the lesson and what's the growth that we have here, and how can we use this in a positive way. AI gives access to more data, thus more uncertainty. Correct. Because even at this point, we can't explain some AI behaviors. Okay, that is correct. We can't explain anyway some human behaviors, and if AI is kind of learning from us, that wouldn't be a surprise. Okay, this is really good comment. I still see some people writing structure and governance will be key. Yeah, for sure that we'll have to have some guardrails, and we'll have to have something there that's kind of the safety net. Now the time. The adaptation time of this structure and this governance might be very fast. And I'm talking this because I'm going to bring here a concept. If we look at governments and how countries are run in the world, compared to technologies, they aren't fast enough to adapt legislation and laws comparatively to technologies. Okay, so maybe we'll have to see even the future, how we play with things, because by default we try to be sometimes very fast in some ways and sometimes very slow, but the structure and governance might, which is very key here and very for sure, might not accompany the solution. And I think that's one of the fears that people have, is that the technology will go so fast that we'll eventually not be able to regulate it on time. But we'll learn. I think we'll learn. I just hope we learn in the good way. Okay, so turning on up to my next slide, just to follow up on this, bringing here the empiricism in the age of AI. And I think this is key for us, because eventually what I want to say is that we are still key. People that have worked in Scrum, that have worked in empiricism, are key and more key. And I'll explain why. So transparency still exists, and that will always exist, because we try to get the truth, and we'll actually have more and more information. And so transparency, eventually what we'll have is that we'll have transparency faster. So instead of having to collect and have surveys in this, probably AI will collect in seconds, and we'll get information after an event, like in seconds. Boom. Here is the report, 20,000, 30,000 people voted. This is the summary. This is how we position the information. Now, where the fun comes is that inspection needs interpretation, needs context. And here is where I think people will be key, because while computers and AI might do the transparency and the collection of data and even the summary of data very fast, the context of the big picture and the context of how we drive this information, how we actually inspect, is key, is human. That's human. And of course, adaptation, well, if we let the machines do it by themselves, if we let AI, they will probably react. They see it's black, let's try to go white. They will try to match on a logical perspective. But if we actually allow humans to be on the control of the decision after the inspection and to propose the adaptation or to ask for possible adaptations to go in this direction, it really has an intention because we actually want to do something. We're thinking of the big picture. We're not thinking at the micro issue. We're talking about the macro one. And I think here comes the complexity, the culture, the understanding of how we want to drive things. And I think, to be very honest, organizations would never delegate important decisions of adaptation to machines. They might ask for the advice, but the decision will still be human, else will be manual, still somebody taking the shots. If you say for small things, maybe they will delegate for sure, but not for big things. Yeah. Questions or comments? Because I know this is an interesting one to put. Okay, let me continue. Okay. Connected with empiricism, and I already mentioned complexity on how we see the world and our interactions as a human being in society are still very complex. And even if we forget society and people, if you look just at work, there's a lot of customers, there's a lot of internal relations, stakeholders, partners. It is a very complex system. Now, you might say, well, machines might try to predict and automate and simplify the full line, but there's a big issue. The world is raw, so things happen. And then on the other side, the consumers and the customers are people, which are unpredictable, which follow trends that nobody understands, which have humor, which have different different political and social and religious views, and so that creates that there is no one solution. By default, by design, we live in a complex situation, and even for work. And if we see the potential that, okay, maybe automation will try to bring us something that will be more custom made, that will eventually even bring more complexity for AI to work on because we want to bring a specific tailored product for a person. So eventually that will never be able to do it without the AI, but it will be very interesting. So probably we cannot automate complexity, not in a healthy way, if we want to keep our horizons open. And then, okay, innovation, ethics, culture. We can't really put this in a box. Even if the box is very intelligent and very smart, eventually the world and work will be driven by human appetite and by human desire, if you want to put it this way. And that will constrain the whole use of the tools and how we evolve the tools. So I think here that there's a point where even for us for work, and if we talk about the work of Scrum and empiricism and ways of working, continuous improvements, continuous change, there's a part where machines will have several issues in interpreting our context. Yeah. Okay. Going just to bring this slide here because I think this is a fun one to bring. It's not mine. I can leave the credits afterwards, where we actually see the human versus machine judgment. And I think this is interesting to see. Well, actually, AI can process the information very fast, can do calculations, can do reports. Awesome. But it is not intuitive and is unable to make strange decisions. Sometimes we need to make decisions based on intuition and context that are right, but if we look at the data, they won't be the decisions to make. And so this is a parallel that will come and that we see in humanity. So from the learning, we also have that AI needs a big power set of information to learn, and actually human beings learn from experience, from failure, from reading, from trying it. It's a very different way of experimenting, and we actually want to do new things. We risk it a lot. From the part of emotional intelligence, I think here there's a big shift here because eventually machines can recognize a pattern, can read people, can understand the physiological response. But in terms of human, we can actually feel the emotion. We have empathy. we can play, some people can play with people's emotions. So there's another level of where I think we completely master the situation. Creativity, also, I think AI can do it based on and data sets. And if you ever went to an AI image generator and you've tried to make a request for an image, you know that the more precise and more prescriptive you are of what exactly you want, the better it will come. While our creativity does not work that way. Our creativity most of the times works because you connect. I went to somewhere and then I want to this and then I saw something there. So it's very random how our mind works, but it's very creative and original. And I have worked with designers in the past, and whenever they had to do something crazy, they would go for different environments, to nature, and you would say, well, it's they will connect with other things to get information, not data sets. And consistency and reliability. Well, here is, I think, is the fun part of being a human being. We are not machines. We're not very consistent. Machines are consistent. They never get tired. They always do the same thing at the same time. Well, as human beings, we're kind of, we get tired, we get lazy, we get issues from our personal lives emotionally. But eventually, when it's 1 minute to midnight, we suddenly change the hat and we do some miracles because we are creative and we are unpredictable. So there's quite a big difference here from the perspective from the artificial intelligence to our what we consider our human intelligence or human behavioral intelligence that really affects, and that this is the opportunity for us is understanding where our strong skills are and how we can actually use the new tool or the developing new tool to actually help us evolve. Yeah, I'm nearly finished, Joe. I don't know if you have any question.
I'm just reading some of the chats, and I don't know if this is a good time to just
Please.
couple of things. Chris Lopez points out machines are learning, so they may eventually circumvent the process. I'm not sure what the context of that statement is. So, Chris, if you want to elaborate on that statement.
Yeah, so I think George, as part of his presentation, mentioned that the managers or the business leaders are giving them simple tasks and not giving them more complex tasks, right? And that would be assigned to humans. But at some point in time, actually, there was a YouTube video about a couple of weeks ago. Now, I think they call him the godfather or the grandfather of AI. And he had mentioned that we're coming into a scary moment. Actually, there was AI where they were having a conversation. The, one of the humans and the AI. The AI tool actually started blackmailing the person, the human, and I think one of the blackmailing approach AI was using was it was going to tell his wife he was cheating on her, etc. So my point being is it is learning, it is progressing. We're counting on machines, they start talking to each other. So we just need to be careful. And that's in essence what that CNN documentary was talking about, or that 15-minute episode was talking about, is we're starting to get to a scary point where we think we can keep it in a box, but it is getting to a scary point. So that was my point of my feedback. And I think
Okay.
George may have noticed too, because he may have seen the same thing I did.
Yeah, yes. And I understand the worry. I understand the risk. I think how do we mitigate the risk? Probably will not be able to control this in a box. And I think some specialists have mentioned that because eventually what we're teaching AI is how we behave as humans. So we have good behaviors and bad behaviors, and the AI might mimic us. So what you eventually want to do is have alternatives of positive, constructive AI that has data sets and behavioral models that are positive. Because if he's just grabbing, if he's absorbing, if we're teaching a new child our good and bad behaviors, he will eventually mimic the good and bad. Now, is this a big risk? Yes, probably. Will we have to learn, have to find a way to deal with it? Yes. Now, is it stoppable? Probably once we open the box, it's not. Maybe we still haven't opened the box, but eventually, I think, and this is part of the human evolution, we'll find ways to adapt and to negotiate with the situation. Here is the concern is that we're not fast enough to create regulations and safety nets for technologies. and this might go very fast and might be smarter than us. Well, if its purpose is to live among us and to help us evolve as a human being, then that will be positive. If their purpose is not clear, then, well, other issues will come. But on the context that I have here about Scrum and empiricism, I really think that the machine is going to actually run through the process in the future. Maybe it will need less and less intervention of humans, but I think the idea of humans delegating everything to a machine is not, maybe not for our generation. We still have to have the off button and go outside and look at the sun and come back and turn on the TV. So I think this will still take time and it still take evolution. And I would imagine that some safety nets are in place. But I understand your worries, Chris, for sure.
And then Chris Meyer points out, what does it mean in the context of Scrum if engineers are laid off in large scales and replaced by AI systems?
Okay, that's a nice one. I actually have a slide talking about simulating a software project. I think it's the next one. Let me see. Yeah, but let's talk. The evolution of work, and before going to the slide, I think this is important. If you look at the pre-industrial age or pre-industrial revolution age, where we had lots of people doing manual work that suddenly were replaced by factory lines, there was a transition point where there was an employment, where there were a few years or decades where people needed to reinvent themselves because just the need and the context changed. And I think here, if you are an engineer, you have a set of skills and knowledge and experience where you can use them. Now, will you use them in the same way? Probably not, because the environment, the context, the needs will change. So you have to be smart enough, have to be aware or be patient in a way to see, okay, where will my opportunity for me to use my skills will come, because the way that I was using them until now was probably not going to be needed anymore, or not in the same way. It will eventually bring up more opportunities, but I'll bring up the part here after. I don't know if you want to bring more comments from the chat, or I still have 2 or 3 slides just Joe. So
oh, go ahead and finish
Yep.
your slides, and we can open it up to Q&A.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so Scrum teams in the age of AI. So I'm really touching the sweet spot that where we're going. So if we want to use this in a positive way, and I like to bring this on a positive way here, I would see that AI and all these technologies that are emerging will actually empower teams to adapt and to move quicker. Okay, accelerating the process. AI might become a team member in a way, or in a proxy product owner, as I just heard in the beginning of this call, because eventually we'll want to delegate some of these tasks. Backlog analysis, task estimation, risk assessment, even more than this. But eventually, if you try to use it on the repetitive or not essential work, we'll try to delegate this, coming from the perspective of delegation. From the point of understanding how we can use this on a positive side is complexity is there. It's just shifting. It's not disappearing. So suddenly we'll not hand over everything to AI. No, because eventually some of the complexity will be dealt by AI. Some of the complexity will then be dealt by people, because we have the context. We have the vision and the dream, and we're still driving the car. So at least we still have that option. I see that human creativity plus AI speed will eventually come to a continuously very fast innovation. When I say very fast innovation, is you having an idea, and then instead of having 2 or 3 years to see it happen, it might take a few days. And that might be amazing if we see it from that perspective, that things can go that fast. Again, it can be used for good or for bad, but the velocity will increase substantially. And I think this is the potential in a way for Scrum. Frederick, yeah, I see your hand up.
I really like this slide, and this is exactly what one of our team is doing right now. The last 2 things, like human creativity and high speed, and we have an AI agent that we treat as a coworker right now. The conversation is so much high that the way they developed it, it's a closed one. It's not an open one, because for confidentiality reasons and stuff. But still, the way the deep data with the deep learning that we enhanced for the last 8 years, now it's come to a point that they treat it. Of course, we have to be careful of the ELISA effect sometimes, but it's still a great aid to ramp up the stuff. But this is the thing, like the human creativity, because the rule that we have is we have to create a draft of something, not completely from the AI. And then in the conversation, we say she because we call her Adrienne. So she is giving us like more think faster, and also she will enhance it. All about enhancing what we already do in the team, and it's a Scrum team. Yeah.
And I think thank you for commenting and for sharing that, Frederick, because I think we're still in the beginning of the journey. Imagine if we get with mature systems, in a few years, this will be kind of I'm at home and I have a robot to cook and I'm just talking with it the things I want to, and it will well that can go into a dimension of complexity that currently we don't have. And I'm just talking of a small thing. If you look in society and we try to scale that up, the potential that we have is very big. Yeah. Any other comments on the slide? I know it's very positive, but eventually I actually see this happening, and even in certain areas of business, people really try to use the speed of AI to do tasks, and then they try to shift and redefine their questions and get a more mature answer. Okay, this is what I want. Boom, copy paste. So it's starting to happen already. There's kind of a partnership already happening in a way, where we're not handing over power to AI. We're just using it as a tool in our interest uh, at least for now. Okay, good. Let's go to the philosophical, sorry, aspect of the human evolution. I like to connect because I started making the journey, and I like to spend here a bit of time on this one. So if we look at the human evolution of our species, we don't evolve in a predictive way. It's not a line. It's not easy. It's a spiral. Okay, it's not a line. We don't know, and eventually all our lessons, and maybe eventually if we one day eventually have other species from other planets engaging with us, maybe their line was completely different than their spiral was completely different than ours, their evolution. We'll actually see that each technological leap, each step that we do of evolution as a society, as an individual, that will actually impact everything around us. That's how we live and how we work. Okay. So until now, everything that we've done has impacted there. AI, I put here is the next step, or is one of the next steps, because I think it will be a big one if it's used properly. AI, and I would say robotics, especially if they are mixed, that will be tremendous. But again, this will eventually be guided by human values and collaboration. I think this is key, being guided by the 99% of humans that do good things for Earth, and not by the 1% that have challenges. Let's put it in a positive way. Um, the future of work, if you follow this line, is not a fight between human and machines. And I think this is where we come from, our duality from our past, where we want to divide the territories. We're already global. We have one Earth. There's no way to divide territories in that perspective anymore, especially when we go to this level of information and technology. It will be really human and machine building things. And we see the initial journeys, the initial partnerships already. And we're starting now. If you say it will scale and the next 10 years AI will be completely out of scale, probably. And then the potential of growth and of change of human mind race will be tremendous. Um, and I think I want just to run to the software scenario because it's the one that I had here. How would we play this? And I already know people doing this in companies a lot. So if you want to run a scenario of a software development and AI where you can actually have GitHub Copilot and running Scrum, fine, it's already happening. What would be the play? So what does actually AI do? He suggests codes, solutions, and can actually automate the test. So it can actually do what engineers and QAs do in a way. Fine, it can do that what we can consider heavy work. But what then do we do? And here is the interesting part, because this is already happening. So we define goals and we navigate through the ambiguity. So this is already happening. Whenever you ask something to AI because you want some information, you have a goal, you write it, they will give you an answer. And then you'll say, well, this is not exactly how I want it. Let me ask another question. Let me navigate until I get what I want. And this is where I see that humans will actually turn, because we are driving the tool, if we want to consider the tool for now. And this, to come to a point where we're not going to use it as a tool and try to use it as a partner in living as a conscious being. I don't think that will happen soon. Maybe it will, but I think we are going to still use it a lot as a tool. And we'll use this intelligence. Okay, how can I expand my potential using this tool? Yeah. Okay, and this comes back to the issue of certain jobs, engineers, people that work in teams. Yes, their work might change. It doesn't mean that they are not needed, but maybe we won't have a team with 5 engineers, maybe we have one. Okay, and then instead of having 5 teams, we have 50. And then instead of building 5 products, we are able to build tremendous, or the work will change. Yes, eventually the work will change. Chris, I see your hands up.
Sure. You asked what the ultimate goal would be. I don't know if folks read a book. It's called Singularity. So that is eventually where we're heading, where you tie the neurons of a machine to humans, and I think they're predicting an IQ increase of some folks 400. So if you go up to an IQ of 400, you can solve every problem on the planet. So again, if you want to read The Singularity is Nearer by Ray Kurzweil, I'll put it in the chat. It talks about that. So what you're saying, George, is leaning towards singularity would be the ultimate.
In a way, we can think about that, Chris. And again, if we see that we want to expand our potential using a tool, and if we can find a way to use it, tap it, like for now, we use an extension of technology with our phones and they're in our hand. If in the future we have something that we don't even connect physically to our body and it's already processing information and vibrations and frequencies and is actually helping us, why not? I wouldn't say that people would be against it. Now, in terms of ethical and morals, that's where I think that we have to decide what's the level that we want to interface with technologies, and where do we say, well, we still want to connect very strongly with nature. How do we embed this? Because we are based on nature. We are based on a context of environment, of evolution through nature. Digital is what we've created. How this connects with it and how we connect with the digital, we might be come to a point of singularity or not. I don't think we'll go that fast there, because I think we will try to block it from going to that level. In the meantime, I think we'll have a partnership or collaboration. Eventually, if you go to a level where we want to exploit it more, fine. But I think, well, there will still be some constraints there. But the direction is that one. I would eventually see that because we don't want to compete and we want to work together, we'll try to merge. So instead of having a phone in our hand, we'll have an assistant talking to us or reading our thoughts that will be helping us through the information and the processing faster, eventually getting a substantially higher IQ. I'm just going to go through the key takeaways, really. You can read them afterwards. And then just the last line. Just the last line. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. So we need to be aware. We need to be aware what we create, because then it will impact our lives. Thank you very much, guys, for the opportunity. If you want, please reach out via LinkedIn or email, and yeah, I'll be more than happy to continue this conversation one day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, George, again, very, very much for being here. Just a reminder to everyone, we are going to be taking the month of August off, our summer break. So our next presentation will be the 4th Wednesday in September. The 4th Wednesday in September. We'll have presentations in September and October, and then of course the Tuesday before Thanksgiving we have Give Thanks for Scrum. Or I think, what is it now, Daniel? 17th annual?
17th annual. It's on the 25th this year.
25th, and it'll be in Burlington. It'll be a live event in Burlington, Massachusetts, and we'll be getting information out soon, and tickets for early bird tickets will be available soon. All right, so want to wish you all a very, very happy rest of the summer. Hope you have a good vacation if you're going on one, or you have safe travels, and we will see you back in September. And again, thank you for a great session, George.
Thank you. My pleasure. Talk to you soon, guys.
Thank you so much, Howard, and nice to see you again, Daniel.